Thank you in advance at some point. You are live.
Say the yield bill, this is Senate Finance. We are back up, Zane is here, we are saying, okay. We are continuing our discussion of the yield bill. We voted it out Friday night, I think around 9 o'clock. But the agreement at that point was that we would continue working on the study committee because the study that's in there is very large and is not focused on what I think we've agreed we have to deal with first, and that is how do we make education affordable? No one has ever seen this many bills. Some of our budgets are going down 2 and 3 times. And so we asked, and Beth has given us, and we're gonna put it up. I asked her to make 2 changes. They had 2 members of each body, the House and the Senate, 1 from each party. But we have the governor's secretary of education and tax commissioner, which gives us probably some Republicans. I thought it would be more constructive rather than do the party split, do 1 from the money committee and 1 from the education committee. So we have that balance. I haven't seen this as a particularly partisan issue. I think we all know that we need to do something, but that was just my thinking on that.
Well, it is a partisan issue to some extent. I mean, the reaction, for example, to the new education secretary is classic. And
Yes,
that may at least have something to do with perception of funding, not
okay.
necessarily the realities of it. But there is a partisan player, I'm afraid.
So I'm open to any suggestions. I'd like to have people that are gonna be working on the issue next year
Yeah.
on it. I don't know what the party mix is on the committee, but we could leave it 1 from each party, if that would work. Okay,
Why do we have so many people on there that are not legislators?
well, read this. We have right now 4 educators, or 4 legislators. We have the Secretary of Education, the Commissioner of Taxes, 1 member of the House Education, 1 member of the Committee on Ways and Means, who shall be appointed by the Speaker of the House, and 1 member of the Senate, who shall be 1 from Education, 1 from Main Ways
There
and
2
Means.
members from the Senate. I know it was one of those committees. I looked at that, had only 1 person from the Senate and 2 from the House.
Yeah, one of them was off. I was against that, but I think it got,
Did it get
it
put?
wasn't this bill. Oh, yeah, it's the study committee and the education
That's what it was.
committee
Yeah,
did
that's
fix
what it
it.
was. Yeah.
It's the original one.
Yeah.
That's standard. But it's needless. So we've got that. We've got Secretary of Education, who designates Secretary of Taxes or Commissioner of Taxes. Committee, 1 committee. At one point, there was the head of the State Board of Education, 1 of these. It isn't in this one. We could put 1 from each party at the end of those
Or what
for the legislative.
I think that would be a good idea. To
Anybody?
ensure that it's in balance.
Okay. What do you do in the House? They have 3 parties.
Big is the Progressive Caucus in that.
It isn't that big.
I think
1 from each major party.
No major party.
we just have different parties, and if they want to choose a progressive,
They can do that. Okay. I think we've got a libertarian. Yeah, there's a libertarian, there's a couple independents. I've got 1 from each.
Major party though, the libertarians aren't, the major parties are progressive, the Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah.
The others aren't participating parties.
It's defined by percentages.
Yeah.
Those persons, statewide candidates, so.
So after that, we have powers and duties. They'll study the potential cost containment efficacy, the potential equity gains of changes to the education funding system to drive change, cost containment, operational efficiencies, innovation in the public education systems. That's a lot of words. The study committee's recommendation shall be intended to result in an affordable education funding system designed to ensure substantially equal access to educational opportunities for all Vermont students in accordance with Brigham versus the state, site, and lead to measurable high student performance outcomes. The study committee's work under this subsection shall include an investigation into the factors that contribute to the current costs associated with the Vermont education system, with the study committee's final recommendations representing efforts to contain costs without sacrificing student outcomes. To achieve this objective, the study committee shall have made recommendations at a minimum regarding the following.
I'm sure
It's a lot of words.
it's on the screen now.
It's on the screen, okay.
It's always
Well, that's
cost
back-
containment, never cost reduction.
Is the reduction in there?
Well, inclined to. It's how to reduce the ongoing cost of education, I think is really critical. It's not just containing.
Yeah, I would like at some point to say, this year, the increased cost of education has become unaffordable for many Vermonters, citizens. Taxpayers.
Nobody's arguing that.
I just added this and I track changes on, so that should be able to follow this, but Senator Brock too. I'm trying to help them.
Okay. No,
Overstepping
you can do that, that's fine.
to contain and reduce costs without sacrificing student outcomes.
Can you at the top put one from each,
Oh, yeah,
just do divided by party? That way they can pick and choose.
divided by party,
They'll find a way to say it,
and then same down
or
here,
portion by party.
a portion by party,
I don't know, but then,
from separate parties.
oh, we could say, giving as much consideration as possible with balancing to the main balance between different political
Well, there's a term
parties.
that they use.
Normally it says one from each political party.
Yeah.
I can see where the progs.
Yeah.
Can serve as pots to balance amongst political parties. I think that's all you can say. Okay,
Same for both House and Senate.
yeah. Okay. So we've got, where are we? Can we print that thing when we're finished?
Yeah.
Okay, then I don't have to keep copious notes here because it's clearly done up there. All right,
Use this, I'm just gonna make sure I save it somewhere intentionally.
okay. Okay. All right, to achieve the objectives. So taking class size requirements, including recommendations regarding staff to student ratio that are in alignment with national best practice and lead to schools staffed by qualified workforce. It just seems like there could be, say the same thing with fewer words. Class size.
You can drop the and lead to school staff by qualified workforce. There's national best practices, assuming.
Including recommendations regarding staff to student ratios that are in alignment with national.
We're supposing staffing it with an unqualified workforce.
Whether, before we look at class size, I'd like to look at school size. And how,
Are sort of pretty much linked together.
well,
infrastructure, the buildings, determining class size.
if your class size, yeah, but. Yeah, your classes are in your schools, if we bring. I mean, there are national standards for the optimal size elementary and high school. We can't afford to have a teacher teaching less than 10 kids.
I'm just jumping ahead to see if
Okay.
it speaks about building facilities. I think some of the versions did.
That's required. National best practice.
Threshold. No, there's nothing really on the facilities, so we wanna add it.
Okay. By school staff by qualified. National Guard president lead to school staff by qualified workforce, yes. I'm told that we do not necessarily have that right, well, we've got a whole lot of. What are they, not fully licensed teachers, we know that. Because we have a shortage.
So. Would you like a whole other enumerated section on building size and facilities, or do you want to amend maybe number 3?
Let's see. What alternative funding models would be a more affordable, sustainable, equitable education financing system? Funding models. Okay, because we've got. a Couple things. One is the funding formula. The other is school or class size or our whole student to staff ratio. And then we've got the funding formula. I have been told that we should have something in here on the impact of tuitioning or vouchers. Because they may have an inflationary incentive. And excess spending, if we've got it down low enough, that might work, but it hasn't worked a lot. Because if you have allowable growth, will grow.
So there's an amendment that was sent to us from a House member regarding what you were speaking to. I do have it up, and it's building off what Representative Holcomb was talking about regarding the tuitioning students, how to calculate the long-term average. Want me to share that and walk through it?
Yeah, we can look at that. This again is, I think Rebecca sent it to everybody.
Not sure.
This was Ways and Means, I think, or about Popes, and is she, no, she's on Ways and Means.
It is unclear to me why they did not end up including it. Maybe she presented it on the floor and voted.
I don't know.
But this is from Rebecca Hall to come
Future
to.
assistance leading to 2 new sections now. Determination of weighted long-term membership and per pupil education spending.
She basically highlighted a concern that with our current tuitioning model, it's a fixed amount, even though the pupil weights per district change how much funding those districts get, and so she.
Okay. We don't know enough to do any of that. As I told her, you had it for 4 months and we had it for 4 days. Several of which we were on the floor until after 3 o'clock. We have not heard from half the people that the House heard from. But I've heard enough concern about tuitioning and the weighting. And I think we could ask in here, class size requirements.
There's 2 types of tuition. There's tuition within the public school system.
System,
And then
and
there's
there's,
tuitioning to schools that also charge tuition,
right. So
which get average.
class size, I think that facility size. Okay,
In tuitioning.
no, I don't think there's an and there. All right, facility size. we could add, how far down do we go here? Alternative funding model would create a more affordable, sustainable, and with that. Whether encouraging or mandating further school district governance, governance consolidation is not a problem, that's what we did in 46. And I've got one school board and 5 schools, so. I think, take out governance, and you'll have to strike it, you just, so she knows. Okay. Should be encouraged to mandate it taking into account unique geographical
Do you
association.
want and facilities here too? So whether encouraging or mandating further school district and facility consolidation?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
I like
Recommendations for consolidating the provisions of administrative services, including provisions of professional development, long-range planning. Okay, adjust.
Taking into
adjustments to
account the unique
excess spending
geographic needs.
threshold, including recommendations that target specific types of spending.
You're on number 4, Senator McDonald's still talking about number 3. Did you,
The 3, what are we doing on 3? No.
as unique geographical, do you have concerns with that language?
No, taking into account the unique geographical whatever, and then
On the previous page, we said to be
in line with national standards. Well, our geography is not in line with national standards.
which is,
Specifically, he's gonna wrestle with.
Of needs of the different communities. Unique geographical and socioeconomic needs. I can remember one community that's down in a valley in the middle of the mountains and it was further south. But other than putting their first graders on a bus for an hour. They were excused from the original mandate. See, I told you they'd bring us the bills we got. We
this,
got more than 2 bills?
No, just,
Just 2?
do you
Okay.
want some more?
No,
Oh, okay.
I think I have 10 up here. I've got to get out in the next 2 days, so. First, we're gonna get this one out,
One at a time.
one at a time.
To your previous,
So, but it does say geographic and socioeconomic needs, so. I think that covers it, Senator, if you can.
this is an opportunity to speak about town tuition program. Do you want to amend that other conversation? Tuition expense?
Let's see. Last year. I'm down here. The different communities, the role of the current town tuition program. The role. Plays in the provision of education. And a transition plan to achieve any recommendations pursuant to this subdivision. Do we have more than a town tuition plan? Yeah, I guess you can tuition to private schools or to public schools.
private schools get the average, independent schools get the average tuition.
Yeah. Or that we pay, yes.
She made the point that kids from a lot more resources are getting the same tuition amount as the same as kids in those towns that need a lot more resources.
So if your parents have more resources and can drive you to Burton, whereas your other kids are left at the next door town. Yeah.
There might be a variable tuition rate.
Let's talk about
You put a hand in. Yeah.
socioeconomic needs of the different communities, the role. The current town tuition program not should play, plays. In the provision of education and any impact on ed spending.
Education.
Its impact on education spending. And its impact on educational spending and equity. She's back.
Those some inline edits.
We call that markup.
If I may, real quick, Colin Robinson from Monterey. I was just on the conversation we were just having as a reminder, school, as it relates to ed fund and school budgets. If towns that tuition for high school, their only place for playing with their school budget is at the
Right,
K,
is
K
at that,
five, K
yes,
eight, whatever it is, and I think that's sort of that nexus that.
nexus. I think we just wanna
That's in there.
look at what happens, what is happening. We are on page 2, bottom of the page.
Would you like me to take over
So you.
if we're editing in real
Yes.
time?
Yes,
What's the
Okay,
town?
great.
can you share?
I just emailed you
Okay.
Word document.
We're meeting in committee now, Paul, can I give you a
Great,
call
that's
back?
St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. Okay,
Okay,
We're in legislative
So-
committee right now.
I think it was felt that we should,
do you want me to share my screen? Can I
Okay,
do the link?
I can give you a call back and we can talk, okay? I gotta go, oh, yep.
okay, we, so far, we just have one from each major party or with the House and Senate members.
I'm sorry, let's go, if it's okay with you all, let's go and refer to, you know, what, I'll just use the draft that Senator Chitton just shared with me.
Okay.
It's all going into a new document anyway, so,
Yes.
okay.
We will finish this.
Wants to open here. Were you using track changes? Okay. No, it's great. Thank you.
I just admitted that to the lobby.
Thank you. Okay. Alright. Okay,
Yes, I'm going to take the little bit, and if you're comfortable with it, that matters, if you're living in, they could just run through the cards, and it's the money.
Yep.
So that you can stay here and keep working.
We're working on this and we're gonna do it as a floor amendment.
So I don't need to worry
Okay.
about what you're doing.
No,
here.
but you need to make sure we've got at least money for some per diems. There's money in that bill for the other study.
There's no per diems in that.
Well, there's whatever's left of the $200,000, which is supposed to be 150. They found it.
Okay, well, does that fund per diems?
It funds that big study that's in there. I don't know
I'll
if
talk
you
to
wanna
Catherine.
leave that in,
Okay.
but this one will, we've got 4 legislators.
Well, that should solve it.
Yeah.
Um,
And we've got the
Oh,
tax
phew.
commissioner and the education commissioner.
I'm just a little confused about what, if we move the bill out, do
Yeah.
you need the money for, or is there sufficient funding in what?
We haven't gotten this far. Friday night, no one was ready to strip that other study out. It needs to happen, but maybe not this year. Because it's on the future education and we're trying to fund
Short term.
short-term education
Okay.
funding.
So what were of the 3, what do you think you don't have the money for per diems?
We don't have the money for per diems for the study on the education finance system.
That's the bill, that's the language you're working on?
Yeah. So we can write. I don't know if what we're gonna decide to do with that study.
All right.
We'll deal with it on the floor,
I'll talk to Kathy.
but we will need some per diem money here. Okay,
okay. Have we moved beyond C? Have we gotten into C? There we go, I see some red.
B, having
Team, class size and facility size requirements.
regarding staff to student ratios.
Okay,
What is it? Okay. Town tuition plays.
Yep.
Role, and that's when we got the impacted, on education spending and equity. There's been some talk that rich students can do more with that tuition than poor students. Okay. Where are we? We wanted to. I guess we've got it there. If tuitioning or vouchers, which I guess is the same thing as tuitioning, has an impact on the funding. And class size, we've gone through that. Okay, I got as far as 5 on page 3. And it says adjustments to the excess spending threshold. I think we might want to say cost containment measures, including adjustments. We've been being asked to do more cost containment, but no one has been able to tell us what it might look like.
yes, so I would just say, before we do that, let's look at everything else, because I think what you're trying to get at is a lot of these subdivisions are cost containment measures.
Right.
So excess spending threshold would be one more cost containment
Okay.
measure. But we can change that.
We could do adjustments or any other cost containment. The word cost containment hasn't appeared.
It
Did?
had,
Okay,
hold on, let me find it. See. Right here. So the study committee shall study the potential cost containment, efficacy, and potential equity gains of changes to the education funding system to drive change, cost containment, operational efficiencies. So the way I read this is,
this is all cost.
these potentially, yes.
Okay. Okay,
And you want recommendations on which of these are feasible, and if they are feasible, how do we do it?
okay, yes. Can we just tell the committee that's.
So
Tell us if any of these are feasible and find out anything else and then do.
So policy option for you all, we can
Yeah.
continue to work on this list, or you can make it simple. And I am not trying to just persuade you in either direction, from a legal standpoint. We can talk about pros and cons, but you could just end it with, you could just say, the study committee shall study the potential cost containment, efficacy, and potential equity gains of. And then you have all of subsection C. And then you don't list out all of those specific, you don't have a list, you could say that.
Yeah.
Now you are hoping and crossing your fingers that whoever's appointed to the study committee is gonna come up with the same list that you all have, right?
So let's. Since we're doing it with members from the committees that have been working on this, but I know the Ed Committee in the House has been substantially involved with talking with Ways and Means.
Mhm.
Down here, we haven't, because we had 4 days. And then we were focused on the Secretary of Education. But I think a lot of us are gonna come with the same background. So that we can build on that. And I'm okay with it the way it is.
The
And
list,
then
with the
it's
list.
important to have the collaboration at the end, so this isn't just us talking to ourselves, this is bringing in everybody else who will be sitting around the room, whether or not we invite them, but, so we will invite them to be actively involved and participants in this discussion. And perhaps have a much bigger table. Maybe we could actually get one of the big rooms with a big table that people could sit around. Because this is going to take some work. It's going to take a lot of work.
Okay, so we're on 5, adjustments to the excess spending threshold, including recommendations that target specific types of spending. I view that language as just one option in a list of cost containment options. Are you happy with that language? Ish?
Yeah.
Okay, ish.
Okay.
So my rationale for putting this language forward is that we have an excess spending threshold that was in place that we're bringing back, and I think it works, it's good policy. I think there might be opportunities where that excess spending threshold could be specific or variable on the types of spending we're talking about within schools.
Yeah.
Be it mental health services, paraeducators, who knows, math, English. I'm not saying I know what they are, but I bet the experts that know how schools are, maybe that excess spending threshold could be variable on the types of spending.
I have concern that as long as we have very small schools that require staffing, excess staffing, if you look at national standards, because you're teaching 10 kids, not 15 or 20. At some point, if all you do is say spend less and you don't do any structural change, you're gonna definitely impact the quality of education because we have it in schools, you have downward pressure on salaries. And when there's a teacher shortage, you don't get the best teachers if you can't pay them. You might get them for a year. They can go, and we've had that issue for years in this state between Chittenden County and the rest of the state. So I think what we're looking for and what the trade-offs are is you need to spend money on education, but you need to spend it on the right things in education. And it might not be trying to keep a bunch of 50, 60-year-old schools afloat with reporters that are half the students they had in them when they were built. So
What I'm thinking on this, I'd be welcoming if your concerns is this whole school budget might have, one school budget might have like this much sports spending, another one might have this much sports spending. Our current excess spending threshold is really on the total spending.
Yeah.
If you go above that, so I wonder if there's an opportunity where there's more granular approaches based on how much you're spending on foreign languages versus schooling versus math. I'm not saying there is one, but if the spending threshold that might get into with maintaining local control, some better insight as to how we can compare across schools and drive more comparable practices for more equitable offerings of our educational.
If
things
we
across
have
districts.
an education department that's doing what I think its job should be. They should be helping the schools learning best practices for how you handle difficult students, or how you handle kids with dyslexia. I'm reading a book, I listened to about a child with dyslexia in a large American city, and I have 2 dyslexic brothers. One was in a group where they discovered dyslexia, the other benefited from what they learned in a special kind of teaching that is required for kids like that. But I don't think teaching children with reading difficulties is necessarily something that every teacher knows how to do, and so you need to make sure that those services are there for every kid and not just kids in the schools that can afford specialized. So we'll see, I assume that's probably in the special ed budget.
One
But
of the issues is this issue of best practices. Who says it's a best practice? Is it a best practice? Is it uneconomical? I
Yeah.
just always hesitate because they're folks who are, let's say, part of the establishment who in effect define best practices, but they aren't necessarily measured in relation to results actually achieved in all cases. That's it. But I hear best practice, I've always said,
there's always a tension there, and there probably should be. Keep everybody on their toes. Okay, we can keep going here.
Okay, 6. Another potential, remember, this is all recommendations, right?
Look at it all.
So implementation of education spending caps
Okay,
on different services, including administrative and support services and categorical aid. That's similar to an excess spending threshold on specific types of spending, but not the same, right? It's a
Right.
different option. We happy with that language?
yeah, I think that
Okay. I think this is a big one that contains a lot, number 7.
yeah,
Right? So what roles, functions, or decisions should be a function of local control? And what roles, functions, or decisions should be a function of control at the state level? Both within the education system as a whole, as well as more specifically within the education finance system.
I think we could probably spend the entire, and we have not decided how many meetings we're gonna pay for in this. But yes.
Okay.
I don't believe any other state allows the amount of local control that Vermont does. They're much more controlled and for better or for worse. Book I'm reading is set in Philadelphia, and apparently the state of Pennsylvania isn't adequately funding the inner city schools. I know that that state, the schools had to borrow because the legislature couldn't come to an agreement on the budget. And school was starting and there was no money allocated, so there's issues on both sides. We've got the opposite, the locals aren't agreeing to the allocation this year. And we have limited ability to influence that, short of coming up with $200 million, which I haven't found yet. But yeah, the school construction costs to that. That's another 328 emergency millions. It's a lot of money. And we have a small tax base, so. Okay,
All right, we're gonna keep 7 for now.
you go.
8, how to strengthen and understand the connection between school budget votes and property tax bills. Well, another way to say this could be like to narrow this, could be recommendation for budget like ballot language, right? But this is a concept that I've heard discussed, so I threw it in.
We put more things on the ballot. Just my thought process is I got hundreds of emails at the beginning of the year when the budget started to come out and we were doing away with the 10% cap, trying to explain why we can't cap the revenue at 10% when the spending was going up 18%. Any business that did that would be bankrupt in weeks. But it is difficult to understand. But that's because we did Act 60. Used to be, we had a foundation formula, which we did or did not fund. And the town's got so much money and they raised the rest of it on local. And so we had towns with 24-cent tax rates and towns with $3.
5 cent tax.
5 cents, okay, mine was still in the 20s. And towns with $3.24 tax rates. And the $3.24 raised a lot less money per pupil than the 28, so we had the Brigham decision.
Standard.
We left local control there. But we put in an equalizing formula, formerly known as the Sharp Tank. We took all the money, we equalized the tax rates. But because we did that, in trying to maintain local control, there's a disconnect because you're raising $20 million on your local tax rate, but you're only getting to spend $10 million because the other 10 is going to other poorer towns. And some of the goals will remember that they used to have a very low tax rate and a very well-funded education system because they had generally a lot of second homes that paid taxes, they didn't send kids to the schools. So we've been trying to do a good thing. We have created a camel, but we had Picus study it, and it does what we wanted it to do. But if you look at it, it's hard to understand that as an animal. It's kind of weird.
I'm not against keeping this in, but I would put to legislative council, is it traditional that we would set prioritization on what's more important to spend more time on, or are all these equally weighted being 1 through 11? And do we have any concern as a
I
committee
think
broadening
the
it?
committee is going to decide, and the discussion, I think, will lead you, as it does here. You start to discuss something, you'll say, you know, we need to look at that. These things don't exist in isolation. If you push something here, it's gonna pop out over there and you're gonna have to deal with that. Or say you like that bump and we'll keep it.
This is less of a priority for me, but if it seems to allow the committee to keep it in their scope of considerations, doesn't comment.
Okay. I think that's pretty much what we're gonna be talking about. I mean, really, should the state be telling you, you need to be in a school that has 300 students? Or is that a local decision that you want your kids in a school with 50 students? And you know, what is the state's responsibility in making sure that every town, Brigham was supposed to deal with that. But when we did Act 46, Rebecca Holcomb was the education secretary. And she told us we have a new equity challenge and we could end up being charged because even with a penny on the tax rate, paying the same amount per student, for poor towns, it's harder to spend that penny than it is for rich towns.
Sure.
And that's the new inequity that's out there. How we deal with that, I don't know. Maybe we'll create all the vibrant communities we're hoping that the housing bill will create.
That'll take a generation.
But that's not gonna happen enough. To have a vibrant community, you need an income source, which generally needs a business that pays money. And it all has to happen. So anyway, I think, yeah, that's.
Okay, we'll keep 8 and we'll move to 9, adjustments to the property tax credit thresholds to better match need to the benefit.
Okay. We should look at it. Austin has asked us to look at that.
Come to the end of our list.
So the last one was eliminate the property tax.
No, just look at it.
Okay,
Make it better match. You might want to move it up. Some of us might want to move it up. Definitely want to move the house. It's included.
can speak to
What do we have?
We can go back to number 1 and just go down through them again, just to refresh us.
Sure. After the custom.
Okay, it was just a request to go 1 through 10, just so that we can remind ourselves what's in this list.
Okay, and I think we can say class and facility size. The editings.
Yes, I'll go through
What a little,
class size and facility size requirements, including recommendations regarding staff to student ratios that are in alignment with national best practices and lead to schools staffed by a qualified workforce. Whether and if so, what alternative funding models would create a more affordable, sustainable, and equitable education finance system in Vermont, including the consideration of a statutory formal base amount per pupil education spending, and whether school districts should be allowed to spend above the base amount. whether encouraging or mandating further school district and facility consolidation should be encouraged or mandated, taking into account the unique geographical and socioeconomic needs of different communities, the role the current town tuition program plays in the provision of education, and impacts on education spending and its impact on education spending inequality, and a transition plan to achieve any recommendations pursuant to the subdivision. Recommendations for consolidating the provision of administrative services, including the provision of professional development, long-range planning, and business services, and a transition plan to achieve any such recommendations. Adjustments to the excess spending threshold, including recommendations that target specific types of spending.
Can we go back to 4?
Mhm.
Recommendations for consolidating the provision of administrative services, including professional development, long-range planning. I guess part of that seems like the second step.
So I see that, I see 3 as school district. And I see 4 potentially as supervisory union,
Okay,
right? So supervisory unions are administrative units.
services, okay,
Why don't we just say so?
Well, I mean, we could certainly say that, not all administrative services
Yeah,
are
but
getting the
administrative, unions,
SU.
including supervisory unions or supervisory unions and administrators. So to make very clear, in one case, what we're talking about. And similarly, a similar adjustment if necessary in 3.
It uses the word school district there.
Doesn't it? Okay, good.
supervisory unions, look at that, all right. We could do that.
So I think I left off on 5, I think we just, so 6, the implementation of the education spending caps on different services, including administrative and support services and categorical aid. What roles, functions, or decisions should be a function of local control, and what roles, functions, or decisions should be a function of control at the state level, both within the education system as a whole, as well as more specifically within the education finance system.
The final version still.
How to strengthen the understanding and connection between school budget votes and property tax bills. Adjustments to the property tax credit thresholds to better match need to the benefit. And then the last item in the list is a system for ongoing monitoring of the education fund and Vermont's education finance system to include consideration of a standing education fund advisory committee. Again, just a consideration. You can take it out, but if you leave it in, this is not this has to be a part of the system.
Okay,
That's 10 items. You will note that at the very top, right, we have this lovely phrase at a minimum. So we're leaving the door open to consider other topics, concepts, systems that fit into the overall charge, which is to make recommendations and efforts to contain and reduce costs without sacrificing student outcomes.
yes. In fact, we would like to improve them out of the middle range.
Was there a
He's
question?
worried about a typo on line 12 there, the size, but I.
Yeah, this is all gonna be, this is all gonna be edited.
They'll catch it. And the red ink will be gone.
So now we have subsection D, which is requiring the study committee to seek input from key stakeholders and list some of them out. Any suggestions?
I'd almost like collaborate with. It's more than just,
It says seek input from and collaborate with.
okay, all right, then, I'm sorry, I'm just reading one line at a time. That,
Yeah, that's what you do.
yeah. School officials, schools.
My question, comment on this is, I respect all of the V's. I just see a lot of Vermont, and I wonder if we might want to broaden this to also include the NCSL or any regional, and I get that we had this conversation, but if there was like a catch-all at the end for just making sure this committee looks to external points of view on these topics so that we don't continue doing what we've been doing with the same voices around it.
And it would be. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what NCSL does. Council of State Governments does some of this. We could put in any national organization that tracks educational,
I did speak to Tammy Colby this
Programming,
morning.
that
She's,
tracks education.
Programming, funding.
Yeah.
And administration. I think it is very important that we hear from other than the people that we always hear from, that we hear from new voices that we haven't. And this includes nonprofit organizations, study committees, academic, who have published information about school governance and funding and cost control.
I have a book from BSEC, but it's called Boards as Governance or Change, that the important role of boards.
But I think.
Which might be good for school
Yeah.
boards.
I like that. Should that get started?
Organizations, but yeah. Yeah, that would leave it pretty open.
How about an org, governance org?
Yeah,
Wide local.
I would like to hear from the state of Maine. When we were doing 46, we were told they had done forced mergers, everybody hated it, nobody was happy with the education in Maine. But that was the end, you know, I don't know, you know, it's now a couple of years later. Maybe now that all the original turmoil has settled down, it's not so bad. So I would like to hear from the Maine Department of Education as to how it did work there or didn't.
But one of the reasons we typically look at NCSL is to look at what other states are doing, what other legislation
Right.
has been passed, and what other studies, and they do a lot of studies, they and the Council on State Governments both.
So we will, they're all in that very broad category and we'll work on.
You like this title? Is this,
Yeah,
One last comment on this.
Yeah.
So I'm borderline nitpicky here, my apologies, but the local, could it maybe be any other regional or national? I just,
we nitpicky realigned our board.
sorry about that, Zane, I just wanted to.
That center column over here is the bills we have to do.
There you go, local, regional, or national. I just think of NEVI, which is a regional organization. They do a lot of studies, so maybe, thank you.
Yeah, we'll. Okay. Now we're gonna get to the hard part.
Don't we have isn't there a New England organization that does the self-diagnostic tests for several states?
I don't know,
When they combine and they give this, okay.
I don't know.
We'll find out.
The kneecaps, that's in New
Yeah.
England.
New England,
Yeah, you're right.
Okay,
Do,
we will find that. So, we're getting down to things like meetings.
Okay, so since this is a legislative study committee, you will have the administrative, technical, and legal assistance of the Office of Legislative Operations, Joint Fiscal Office, and Office of Legislative Counsel. Since you will have the help assistance of Office of Legislative Counsel, I humbly request that instead of a report,
Yes,
the deliverable is proposed legislation.
that was in one of them, yes.
Great.
That much rather do that.
Great.
Then we come to meetings.
I just picked the Secretary of Education to call the first, you have to pick
That's
someone to call the first meeting.
Yep.
So,
That's good.
okay.
Mhm.
On or before July 15th. Okay. You all can select a chair. Do you want co-chairs? Okay.
Again,
You want co-chairs?
I don't know it's necessary.
I don't either. It just gets. I did that with Representative Kornheiser on the ed finance, the income. And it just got awkward as to whose meeting it was this week and picking up from somebody else's train of thought.
Where you have a difference in political party of the co-chairs, it does help to achieve balance.
Right.
I'm thinking of the Government Accountability Committee, where I was with, that worked, I thought, quite well in terms of balancing opinions and getting things out, and then there's another pair of hands, so I can go either way.
This was,
Would allow them to decide, so committee chair or co-chairs of differing parties.
You know, it's awkward.
yeah, this is a small enough group.
Yeah, I think a chair is fine.
Yeah, I mean, this is a small enough group that it's gonna have to be pretty much equal.
The one issue of legislation being the only thing is it eliminates the ease of producing a minority report. And sometimes minority reports are helpful. I think back to the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission is a classic example, where the minority report was, I thought, very useful.
I don't think anything precludes a minority report. It might not fall on party lines.
Whether or not we want to specify that there may be minority reports or not.
I will just say that that my office is it's one or the other, I would suggest, a report or proposed legislation based on the amount of work required and the one person who's doing it. So I would suggest, rather than a report, you have proposed legislation, but there's nothing stopping anyone from introducing another bill, right?
Right,
And working with Ledge Council to draft the opposing concepts.
and we can decide that with the legislation, we could do a list of future things to explore.
I see that in a findings
Yeah,
section.
Finding, yes, something, we're not gonna know. But again, I'm not sure this is gonna split over party lines. I think it might split over urban, rural, or something else. I'm hoping that it won't split. That if you do a good job, this is an important issue, and we all have a stake in it. We all either pay taxes, we send kids to school, and we need to find a solution.
Okay, so we're gonna keep the Secretary of Ed as calling the first meeting to order. We're gonna stick with one chair. A majority will constitute a quorum. And then the study committee will cease to exist on December 31st, 2024.
And people can sue, right? We don't have to.
I think whatever the rules that would apply to standing meetings would apply here.
We should check that
Sure.
because
Yeah.
at one point, House rules, you couldn't vote. And Senate rules, you could. It hit the Joint Fiscal Committee. And I don't know that we can do anything to change that, but
I thought we had joint committees that, I thought the Senate rules. We ran into that before, and I may be wrong, but I thought that we could vote when we had joint committees, but again,
Senate
it
can,
is worth
the
checking.
Senate could, the House couldn't.
Yeah.
House members had to be present, but those are the rules. I think we can say remote. Remote access and voting would be allowed.
So this is
And
not.
the House can't, they can't, and we'll have to accommodate that.
Yep, so we're out of my area of expertise, so I suggest that when I go back to do a final draft on this, I get as much information as possible, understanding that the House is on the floor right now, so I will not be able to talk to the clerk.
So we bring it back. We now have, this is all the pots and pans, how it's gonna happen. Who's gonna clean it up? We have a couple. Are we going to put this in along with the other study, which is presently in the bill? And we don't have a money source. The other bill has the remnant of the 200,000, I think it's 150. We could divide it. And we haven't set the number of meetings. which is frequently predicated on the money. And we have no money to hire.
Or you have set the number of meetings, if you go back and
Have we
share.
got a number of meetings?
Yep, it's, we always kind of start with 10, not more than 10.
That probably isn't enough.
Yeah, I
for the
think
work
so.
to be done.
I'd rather do 15.
Okay,
The
I will,
other study committee has 30.
okay.
Well, you got 6 months worth of meetings. And so you've got 13 weeks. Excuse me, 26 weeks of meetings. And should you meet once a week?
It'll be hard to get people to see.
It is, well, I mean, again, unless you're doing something remotely, but there's a lot of work, a lot of
There's a
gravel.
lot of work that needs. to be
So
done.
even every other week, that gets you down to what, 13 meetings?
I'll change it to 15.
Yeah.
I will just say, I know there's been some discussion about source of per diem.
Mhm.
Since this is a legislative study committee, usually the language we use is these payments shall be made from monies appropriated to the General Assembly. And then my understanding is
There's a budget.
there's a budget there, so you may not need to do anything else here.
Okay, it will depend on if we're gonna leave the other study committee in. If it doesn't, we could say that money would be available to this committee to, thank you, hire consultants or whatever the committee feels that it needs assistance. I said my concern Friday is that the other committee is so broad in its scope that it could have the tendency, it's gonna be pulling from the same group of people, everybody we're consulting with. And I don't know that it has the urgency that this one does. We could, change the starting date till next year, the year after, we could move it out a year if we don't want to touch it, vacations up there. Or we could just do away with it, we could move it out a year and borrow the money and see what we use, which may be not much, and leave the rest for a year out. Got a couple options here.
I don't have a strong opinion, so I think I heard you say we're leaning towards this section 11 and section 1, so our amendment you're leaning towards removing both of those and replacing it with this.
What's section 11?
Section 11 is the education fund advisory.
Here, I'll put it on the screen.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, that's right, we've got the Education Fund Advisory Group, which we have not even discussed. I love having 4 days to do things like this.
If you want to leave it too, it does talk about specifics like district use of reserve funds, education fund stabilization reserves. So there's other topics that we can either pull in or leave it.
And I added, and that is, let me pull it up so that we are, I'm just saying page here.
Just can't find where it starts.
It is on
Don't make it, I'm gonna report this.
page
I've gotta go home.
17.
Yeah.
So it's the creation of an education fund advisory committee. And it's pretty specific to the current financial system, the current funding system that we have. It talks about updating the weights. Updating weights, changes to categorical aid, property tax credit, revenue sources, stabilization reserve.
Yeah, I'm looking at this almost sounds like their version of what we just did. It's got the same people, it's looking at a lot of the same issues.
It's the one of the differences is section 11 is meant to be a standing committee that would meet 4 times a year. And there's a sunset built in at 10 years. You're talking about a study committee.
That's
The language that we just did is a one-time. Dedicate yourself to this work and come up with some suggestions. So I don't think the two are mutually exclusive from a legal standpoint. From a policy standpoint, I would encourage you to think about if the language we just worked on is something that you wanna move forward, I would encourage you to think about what that means for section 11.
I think it's drawing from the same people, and there's only so much. There's only so much energy people have to put into a topic. And I think this would be more appropriate once we decide what we're going to do
Wow.
in our state.
I did, just in case,
Yes.
add
Ah,
the number 10. I can't see it here because I need to share a different screen. Is,
you have questions, Senator Don?
assist,
The last time we did this, one of the things that was available was, between Catherine and Paul Solo and
Long time.
others, yeah. They had the ability, when you talked about funding and recommending changes,
Yeah,
to literally run it overnight in a program. So that you had answers to the questions that were being asked. And do we have such a system?
We either-
Capacity today?
yes, the tax department can run scenarios that joint fiscal has, usually they work together. But I get, we've improved rather than done away with. So I think we can assume that we can do some scenario running. If we tweak this, what happens to that? How
Yes, that was-
expensive is,
When it comes to making suggestions and seeing how they work
yeah.
in a time frame as short as this one is,
Mhm.
that has to be
Yeah.
available.
Madam Chair, can I
Yeah.
weigh
Keisha?
in? Yeah, sorry, I wasn't here right at the beginning. I had medical appointment. In the back of my mind, I've been thinking like the pension, ongoing pension committee, that it is nice to have some group looking at this, out of session, because otherwise we kind of wait for this looming problem and we get in and we feel really pressured to do something quickly without the benefit of ongoing monitoring and recommendations and a group that sort of stays gelled together. I like the idea of an ongoing group. I think if we made ours more of an ongoing group with an immediate report back next January, we'd probably not want to tie ourselves to the one person of different parties, only because you might want to have the chairs of education and finance on at the same time, something like that. But I do like the idea of a standing committee that, is paying attention to this year round.
Okay, this does not start until July of 2025. So our committee will be finished with its work before this is called, so we won't have the overlapping. And that should solve that. Okay. All right, there's a ballot change in this. I think we've decided we're putting stuff on. We're gonna be voting something out. I think you can assume since I'm reporting the bill, I'm gonna report this. Okay. We still have to decide what we're going to do. Are we going to put ours in section 1? Are we gonna put ours and call it section 1 and then put section 2? We could delay the implementation of the other end committee for another year. Because depending on what the first committee does, the second committee is discussing. If we change the basic fabric, then the other committee will have a different framework to discuss excellence within. So to have them, I'm not sure it's the highest and best use of their time until we decide what, if anything, we're gonna do with the basic structure. Then they can build the house.
I like where you're going with that. So what, all the work we spent this morning on would be the immediate thing that we want to get started as soon as possible. And that could then launch into the standing committee as contemplated in section 11. Is that a standing commission?
It gets,
Yes, so section 11 is the standing commission, as your chair pointed out, does not take effect until July 1, 2025. And the language that we just worked on has a consideration for the Education Finance Study Committee of the summer to consider a system for ongoing monitoring of the ed fund. So they could come back and in their legislation, repeal the section 11,
continue.
modify it, whatever, but you've asked them to take a look at it.
So we have section 1 to deal with and we have money. We could delay section 1 until 2025. I think we're gonna need a
Section 1 or section 11?
I would have to do it. This is the section 1 here, the education report. If we don't wanna just chuck it and say we're gonna do ours, we could move it to 2026, which would let us get back for the next legislative session. And it could start in July of 2026 based on what we did. Or we could just let it go and say in 2026, we'll see what we're doing. I know there was some reluctance to remove. I assume it's house eds. Cause our folks just, and I assume we're gonna use our folks' version, which cut the committee to 13 from 23 and did some other language tweaks, which I have right here.
So that Senate education language has not traveled anywhere in the bill.
No,
If you wanna add it, you would need to amend section 1.
one. And I think we should, I don't wanna put it in 23, I just had that.
So, oh, sorry. Madam
No.
Chair, I'm the one who had the reluctance about replacing the entire study.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of compromising in terms of timing. I often feel like it takes a long time to get that big and weighty of a group together. I wonder if we can let them sort of start to form and then say the first meeting will take place on such and such date. I'm not sure how that would work, but it, often it just takes us a long time to get people appointed. So I just wonder if there's a way to delay the implementation, but allow them to start picking.
We have to put them off at least July of 25 to give this committee some time. You might want to do 26 because something this massive might not be settled in one legislative session. Could do either way. And then we can decide what we want to do with the money.
So I think what we're proposing is a first instance of amendment to the House's future public education to take in Senate Education's changes and to push out the start date as you're talking about. And then we want to add what we were working on this morning as another section.
I would like to do ours as section 1 and
Okay.
change this to section 2 because that's how it's gonna fall chronologically. That's what we're saying is the most important.
Great.
And then we've made changes to that study. Let's go through it. So
Do you have that language?
we have the language of what we've changed.
No, do you have, what are we going through right now?
The House, I don't have I had it here earlier. The Senate Ed Committee amendment.
And do you have that language? I have not, your committee has not asked me for that language. My understanding is the committees were working on
I
it.
got handed
Okay,
something
then I will send it to Zane.
and we could post it.
Mhm.
I know they changed all the memberships to like 1 instead of 2. What I'm interested in is saying whatever money has been appropriated for that study will first be available to ours and then next year we can Anything that's left will go to them. Cause they're talking about hiring consultants and at least the original one was,
They would be,
it was big.
I'm not against that, but
Okay, Jeff sent Zane the Senate's proposed changes to section 1.
Okay.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, we're gonna do a floor amendment. And before I leave here, I'll need to know whose names are on the floor amendment and the order, but I think we can wait till the end to do that.
Okay.
So section 1 is going to become the education finance study that we just walked through.
Yeah.
With the changes that we just did together.
it's be a floor amendment to the finance report, right?
It'll be a full amendment to the bill. Whatever is voted out of appropriations.
It will be a amendment to the report of Senate Finance as further amended by Senate Appropriations, if they make any
If
amendment.
they make it. So it will be a floor amendment to whatever form the bill is in when it hits the floor.
Yep. If we're doing this on second reading.
We're doing it on
Okay.
second or third, yes. I
Well-
think they're gonna put it in all remaining stages of passage
Okay.
tomorrow, if possible.
Okay, so then section 2 is going to become what was section 1, the Commission on the Future of Public Education.
Right.
And it is going to incorporate the changes that Senate Education suggests.
And saying, can you put that up?
Here, I can share my
You
screen.
can share your screen.
Yep.
So you probably should just do it really quickly.
I think we did walk through this on Friday, but we can certainly walk through it again, so. Not-
This is a report on for,
This is the Commission on the Future of Public Education. They never had possession of the bill. So
Right.
this is just their
So they-
suggestions for section 1.
they being the.
Senate Education.
Education, okay.
Okay. The other one, I'm assuming came from House Education, was attached to the bill.
It was House Education and further amended by Ways and Means.
Okay.
Yep. So,
We are moving this out, rather than starting this summer, we're starting our finance bill this summer. And then next summer, hopefully, if we're far enough along on what the financial structure is going to look like, we will have, then they can study the future of education under whatever the structure is
Okay.
at that point.
so what I think would be most helpful is if we go through this, because you may want to change some things based on the work you just did.
Okay.
Okay. So the creation of the future, or the Commission on the Future of Public Education does not really have any changes to it. Membership. Senate Ed is suggesting that we take it down. The bill is passed by the House. Had 2 to 3 in each of these
Yeah.
categories. We're gonna take it down to 1 for a total of 13 members.
It's better,
Yeah.
manageable.
The steering group. Remember this commission,
That's right, they set up a
steering group to provide guidance,
Do you
yeah,
need it now that you've got it down to 13 and
policy choice.
23?
So let's talk about what the steering group does.
Yes,
So, and my understanding is we're gonna push all these dates out a year. I'm just gonna push everyone out a year.
everything's,
Okay.
yeah. That's
So on or before July 1, 2025. The speaker will appoint 2 members, the committee on committees will appoint 1 member, and the governor will appoint 2 members to serve as a steering group,
But you've already only got one, how many members do we have?
13.
And now we're doing 2, we're doing 5 to steer 13.
It's 5 of the 13 to
Yeah.
steer the 13.
We needed the 5 and there was 23, but with 13, are you thinking of dropping the steering group?
That's what I'm wondering.
Total policy, I would encourage you to keep reading so you can decide whether or not you do want. So with this, the main
Consultant or consultants.
Yep, so the main piece of work of the steering group is being the kind of liaison between consultants. And also in charge of developing a work plan. So if you are confident that the 13-member working group itself. can deal with the consultant and come up with a working plan on its own, then great.
I don't even know what we're hiring consultants for.
So this is not a legislative committee,
It is not.
no. And so you will not have the assistance of JFO or Ledge Council. And so what this working group
Why isn't
contemplates,
this a legislative committee?
there's no legislators, there's not enough legislators.
Oh,
This is all non-legislators, there's only 2 legislators on the committee.
so we put
There's
four
2 or,
legislators.
There's
On
2.
okay, so it, originally, you had 2.
Oh, yeah, you're
It's
right.
been changed to
Yeah,
1,
so I will have to change that.
Okay,
so it's now 2? Or is it back to 1? Or is it reduced to 1, which is what I thought was done here?
There's 1 member of the House, 1
Okay.
member of the Senate.
Got it.
I need to update the steering commission or steering group.
Yep.
Should you change, actually, no, I don't need to do that at all. Because the steering group is not member, doesn't have to be legislator, so no, I don't need to update that. It's
okay,
1 member of the House and 1 member of the Senate. So the consultant would be writing a report and providing technical and legal
and
guidance.
we're paying the consultants.
Yes.
I just think we could find better ways to use the money right now, given our present circumstances. We can. I just think we need to get the finances under control before we start planning for a glorious educational future.
But one of my concerns in all of this is that we do the finance report first. And we decide there should be 1 school district and 2 schools in it. And then a year later, this group comes along and says, no, there should be something entirely different. And does that mean that all the work that's been done with the first piece of this on finance is obsolete almost immediately? That's a potential.
Oh, yeah, depending on who gets put on there and depending on what we do and how well we do collaborating and finding middle ground that we can all live with and nobody really loves. Which is democracy, but not. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's a real risk.
Our committee that we worked on this morning doesn't have a $200,000 allocation, right?
we have no money in this. There's supposedly, at the end of this, the ability to use money that was appropriated to the Department of Education. But I think Jane didn't think we could use it because it went to the Department of Education. I thought what we gave, we could take away,
You would have, so,
reallocate.
let me see, yes, you would have to reallocate it. So let me see if it's in this draft. It is not. So I'm gonna stop sharing here.
And they didn't put the money in, they just left.
Nope,
it.
that draft was just Senate Ed's language.
Okay,
So let me pull up. So that we can show you. What they did.
maybe
To
what
fund
we
the
could do is
commission.
move this out. Allocate the money to our committee with the proviso that if we did not use all of it, and I can't see how we'd use $150,000. That the remainder would be available to this committee. Next year. They could go back and look at what we've done. And then make any adjustments they feel necessary to their study committee. Does that work?
Yes, but I think we've got a lot of layers of details
Oh, I
before we
know.
get something that you should pass out. So the first question I have for you is, what is your legislative committee going to do with $200,000? Because right now you have no authority to hire a consultant or a financial analyst or
Do we
anything.
need to hire a consultant?
Well, what is the $200,000 going to be used for?
Well, I'm thinking per diems.
Okay,
It'll go to the general fund to
okay,
cover the cost of the study. It would be legislative per diems plus any expertise that the committee feels is necessary to hire.
So you wanna revert that, so here is, this is the language that the House passed. So in the big bill from last year, you all appropriated $200,000 from the general fund to AOE for the school construction task force.
Yes.
So, and the AOE still has that money.
I thought the school construction task force just didn't, they used like 50,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
still has most of this money.
Okay,
You want a reversion back to the general fund and then a new appropriation to who? The General Assembly? For,
where's Jane?
I'm not sure
You wanna see if she's still over there? Might be.
and if there's anyone from JFO.
Yeah, well, we can ask.
Well, I'm just looking at the clock. You guys are gonna lose me very soon to the House floor,
That's
unfortunately.
right. I think we want to revert it to the general fund to cover the cost of the per diems and the cost of any any expertise that the committee feels would be beneficial. I'm sure there is boilerplate language to say that, I just don't know what it is.
Understood. Okay, so can we put this little piece aside for a second? Okay, so. What do you wanna do? Here, let me
I think
switch.
I just leave the whole committee alone, I mean,
Do you want to incorporate Senate Education's recommended changes?
I think so.
Okay, do you wanna see what the rest of those are?
Yes.
Catherine's here. Catherine,
Yes.
we have finished our financial study,
Congratulations.
so, and we are going to put that on section 1, the present section 1, which is the Future of Education Commission, is going to stay unless somebody gives us a good reason not to. We are going to move it out in years so that when they start in 26, they will know where the ed funding study committee has gone and they can work on that foundation. We are now trying to steal their money.
Okay.
There is,
We're on YouTube.
yeah. I'm honest and blunt.
Sure.
There's apparently 150,000 that didn't get used by the school construction task force. My thought was, we would revert that to the general fund to cover the cost of our study committee, the per diems, and if we needed to hire any expertise or whatever. And that anything, we could just be silent on the next year. We could say anything remaining would be for the use of the second study committee or Jane and the appropriations is gonna do what they're gonna do, no matter what we say, so.
So you want to revert the 150,000 that is sitting there that wasn't spent,
Right.
and you want to be able to use it for this new committee, and whatever is not spent could potentially be used in future years on education finance.
Yes.
And you want to know how to do that.
Yeah.
I think you would want to revert the money, but I think I can get you an answer, but I can't do it off the top of my head right now.
Okay. I think if we could do that. This will be a floor amendment.
Okay.
We could come in. I need to give you time to draft and you need to go to the floor and I need to give you time to think and draft.
So are you trying to vote this out right now?
I've gotta have it for a floor amendment on the floor tomorrow, but
Okay.
we could come in at 9:30 tomorrow. We're on the floor at 10.
Okay.
Unless Keisha didn't call us in, right? Tomorrow?
No,
Okay, so we could come in tomorrow morning
I'm
No,
not available, I'm already booked. But there's not a lot of drafting for me. I
okay,
just need a moment to do it and
Okay.
then get it back from editing. I think the big piece is figuring out how to draft this, but I will just
Right.
say, I don't think that we can appropriate money for future years.
No, but you can
No.
hold it.
Hold it.
You can hold it. There's 150,000 that was appropriated last year that wasn't
Yes.
spent, so we can hold it and use it and then have what's remaining. I'm hearing you say, let's just say we use
we
40,000.
can't find future legislation.
right.
The Appropriations
But-
Committee decides they want to use it, they'll.
But they could use it for something else if they chose, but
Right.
we could signal that we're setting it aside, use whatever we want. Let's just say you use 40,000 for this year, then there's
And then they'll
110
have
left
110.
that could be used for
Yeah.
something in the, okay, I will work on that. I will.
Or
We do not know how much is left.
Right,
We have a guesstimate.
Okay.
I have a guesstimate.
we will just say any amount will be appropriated or will be made available to the two study committees. Something like that.
Yes,
I
okay.
think there'll be concern, some
Unobligated
that we're gonna
funds.
spend all the money this year,
Which is
will
out.
really-
I can't see
mean, I
how-
can't imagine how we
I
would, but
can't
I
either,
think someone will raise, particularly on the House side, will raise it as an issue.
but
Can we come back to my bigger question of,
Okay.
there's nothing in your language that talks about hiring anyone, so would you like me to add language?
the commission, our committee can,
What do you wanna
within
call
budgetary
that?
constraints, may hire any expertise it feels necessary to complete its task. Or whatever the boilerplate is for that. Within budget.
Okay.
We do it all the time, there's gotta be.
Yeah, I know, I'm just trying to think
Pull the
about,
Contract.
I know, I think you actually, I think the joint fiscal office would probably hire the consultant, whoever it is, and, okay, why don't we go off and work on this, and
Okay,
work with Beth on that?
okay, committee, can we hang tight for a little while?
Are you gonna, do you want it today or do you want it tomorrow morning?
Today if possible. Then I can get it up to the floor and they'll have it in the calendar
Okay.
and I'll have it to prepare when I present the bill tomorrow.
But do you have time to do it today?
I do have time, I don't know if Beth does.
I will try my best, I'm pretty sure
Can
that I
you draft it
can.
while you're sitting on the floor?
Yeah.
If no one talks to me, if no one talks to me, then yes.
Okay,
You're not back on the floor, are you, Senate?
no,
You're
that was
done.
it, that was
Okay.
just a token session to move. We got 2 more bills,
Okay,
so Senator Chittenden can put them up on the line. It looks like we've got 10 bills up there, so we're gonna be knocking them out starting the minute we get off the floor tomorrow.
Can
I
I
think most of them just have fees.
Can I just confirm, that we're taking the suggestions from Senate Education, but you're not touching the Commission on the Future of Public Education at all, other than pushing the dates out? Is that accurate?
That's
You
it.
don't wanna run through any of that language? Okay.
No, we'll have time next year to,
Okay.
with it, depending on what we do. They're gonna have the chance next year to change their language to conform with, and it's quite possible we will achieve nothing. Because this is gonna be a really heavy lift to do anything significant. I think we found that out. To change the educational system is a heavy lift and I think we'll all do our best, but I wouldn't.
so is it 6 members on this summer committee on ed finance? Is that what you're calling the summer committee or task force?
It's
Two.
it's a task force. I think we gave it up to 15 meetings.
That's four.
There's
Four
four
total.
Plus legislators.
Plus the secretary of that.
Okay,
And the secretary of taxes, and then we will work with everybody else in the educational universe, including national and regional organizations.
and you're gonna have 15 meetings by January? Is the report due in January?
Legislation is due in
January.
January.
That's a lot, I'll just say
It
that.
is.
Maybe we can hire a facilitator. To help it with the public hearings, I mean, it's just, there's all the logistics of it, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe when we write the language, we can use some of the money to, not just for ed finance expertise, but to assist the.
See if we can hire Rachel back. She's done several of these
Well, and-
statewide tours and,
And then there was a woman who facilitated the renewable energy.
oh, that one this summer, okay.
She was a professional facilitator. So I'm just saying to you, there are people out there that there's logistics and then there's a facilitation. So I'm just thinking.
That would be helpful, because we don't have committee staff, everybody in the summer.
15 is like every other week. Is that what you think you want to do?
I don't know how we can do this volume of work. It says up to, or it should, up to 15.
Okay.
Well, that was for per diems. There's nothing limiting how many meetings you could have.
Well, we get paid up to 15, then we won't do more.
I mean, there's a trade-off between having, meetings are important and also then it takes staff time so that you're not
Right.
doing other work. So.
You think about it, I mean, we think it's gonna be a pretty heavy lift, and we're gonna have to cover a lot of territory. I mean, we did what, 5 meetings or 6 for the income tax? And I don't think anyone felt that we got overly in depth with a lot of that. And it's going to take a lot of facilitating to get buy-in from a lot of people. It's.
Yeah, I'm just thinking you basically have 5 months. You have July,
Yeah.
assuming that you don't start till July 1st,
July 15th.
July 15th.
Not over, it's campaign.
So that's 3 meetings a month. that's a way to think about it.
Mhm.
But it's a maximum. It just
Max.
feels like a lot, but that's okay. We can, I think we should put in there, if you're comfortable, again, this provision to hire assistants and whatever, not just in finance expertise,
Okay.
but
That's
to
fine.
help with facilitation and public outreach. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and then there's the public. But we're broadcast, so that's one thing that helps is people can watch. And we can hold a public hearing without having to drive to Bennington. I remember those 3 days going down through Rutland and Bennington and putting on, and another day going north. And I think we could do some, towards the end, some Zoom meetings, which it makes it easier for everybody to come out and
Mhm.
take part. We could do them in the evening and not have to worry about driving 5 hours home at night
Mhm.
in November. So Zoom will help with a lot of this.
Okay.
Okay, and you can adjust, you've done more of these than we have, so I think we'd like the ability to do as much work as we can. Just to have the time to do the work. I'm feeling a real lack of our ability to do any delving into the yield bill, because we had 4 days and 3 of them were half days with 4 schedules. I don't want to feel that way. When we present it, we need to feel confident that we've done our work, and it's.
Why don't Catherine and I get going,
Yeah.
working on language, and I will email Zane as soon as we have something. Does that work?
Yeah, do you have any idea?
Nope.
Nope, depends if anyone asked her a question on the floor.
Correct.
So can we send a message out that no one should ask her a question?
Do you want to go offline?
Yes, we should go off